All right, let's start off. Welcome, everyone. This is our first monthly meeting branded as TeamNation. And of course, our previous name was Your Teams UG. And we created this, me, myself, Chris Ward, and later on Vesco Nopenham and Chris Webb came along the train as well. We created this user group because we wanted to create a network of Teams professionals who are very passionate about Microsoft Teams and everything about Microsoft Teams, basically. And we wanted to provide opportunities for people to, improve in their speaking skills. We found out that it was really hard to get into conferences and stuff like that, especially if you're not on Microsoft MVP. And we wanted to give, normal people passionate about and have some form of experiences with Microsoft Teams to have the opportunity to present and also to democratize knowledge and experience as well. If you're interested in speaking in one of our monthly meetings, you can submit to teamsnation.rocks/CFS. So, we'll love you to do so. So please go on and submit, and we'll make sure you get a slot. So, as I previously mentioned already, we're now TeamNation, and we rebranded European Teams user group to just TeamNation. Why did we do this? We did this because we previously started out focusing on the kind of the European area, but very quickly we kind of reached well above the borders of Europe, and we thought that rebranding now seems appropriate because we're not the European Teams user group anymore. And also, we actually became aware of another organization using the domain TeamsFest, which we used previously for our conferences, full-day Teams conferences. So because of that, and they also use that to kind of for corporate purposes, and there were sponsors involved and stuff like that, and we don't use that at all. So we decided it would be a good idea to just rebrand for that reason as well. Although we wish them the best of luck, of course. And of course, previously we had European Teams user group monthly meetings, and we had TeamsFest, which was our conference, and they kind of disaligned. So we wanted to align the user group and the conference name as well. So now our monthly meetups is called TeamNation Monthly Meetups, and our full-day conferences will be called TeamNation Community Conference. And the next conference, I'll heads up here, is on the 26th of May next year. All right, so just quickly before we move on with our speakers today, just heads up, how can you get involved in our user group? How can you help us? So first of all, please follow us on Twitter at TeamNation. So please do so and get all the the latest news and so forth. Also, please follow or become a member on our Meetup page. For you get full information for every monthly meetup we have. You get a calendar invitation and such things. So I really recommend that you do that. We also have a site for our TeamNation conference at teamsnation.rocks/2021. And of course, as I already mentioned, if you want to speak at our monthly meetings, just go in at teamsnation.rocks/CFS. All our sessions for our monthly meetings and for our previous conferences, TeamsFest, we have all of those sessions are uploaded to our YouTube channel, which you can reach at teamsnation.rocks/channel. And of course, we're at LinkedIn as well at teamsnation.rocks/LinkedIn. So make sure to take a print screen. Make sure to visit all these places. At least be a member of our Meetup page and follow us on Twitter. So our speakers for today, we have Hadrien-Nessim talking about Graph API and Teams governance and lifecycle management, and he will start off. And after him, we'll have Tomasz talking about adaptive cards in Microsoft Teams based processes. So, Hadrien, are you ready to kick off?
Yes. Hello.
Awesome.
Hello. I will share my screen.
Yes.
Okay, I think you can see my screen now.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you. I'm very glad and happy to speak at this meeting. Very quick about myself. I work at HubCollab in France, and I'm focusing my work on Power Platform and the synergy and the experience we can build between Power Platform and Teams mostly. So the first thing I want to share before starting speaking about Graph API is the current situation. The current situation is that we have many data, and the search experience is not very good right now. And this leads to a very disturbing situation from a user perspective experience, because we have a lot of information, a lot of data, sometimes duplicate data, and a lot of notification. And from a user perspective, we can be lost very quickly. And the main objective of the governance is to apply business vision. And the sad thing is that I see too often organization or team focusing more on the IT governance rather than the business governance. And the IT governance, the governance from the the governance from the IT perspective, the architecture perspective is very important, but it has to be done with and not against the business vision. And for that, when we mix both governance, the data and IT governance, and the business governance, we can reach teamwork intensity, meaning that we have built an agility for users, for teams, for projects inside an organization. And the one of the vision and one of the goal and strategy I try to share, to implement in any organization or clients I work with, is that Teams has not to be seen as the problem, it has to be seen as the solution. If from an end user we explain and we educate the population, the user population, to understand that everything they need about collaboration will be inside Teams, there will no need to look somewhere else. It's the key start for good governance, because if the user asks himself, can I do a planner? Can I send a message? Can I share a file? He will think everything go inside Teams. And so when we are looking about Teams governance, we need to look about what is the experience, how we will lead user to go through Teams. And the last, Microsoft shared some recent insight about the guest collaboration, because when we look at Graph API, about automation, about governance, from the past year, we focused more on the enterprise governance inside the organization, and we were not looking a lot about the external collaboration. And the main numbers on this slide are that there is a lot of Microsoft 365 groups used day to day currently, and there is a lot of tenants who has guest access. So if we are projecting ourselves, we can think about an organization looking to govern collaboration inside, but also an organization working with partners, and more important, with customers. And maybe their customers are also on Microsoft 365 Cloud, or maybe they are not. And we have to provide them a good experience. And we have to think about them when we are looking about automation through Graph API, because with Graph API, we can also leverage and also handle the external collaboration automation. And often organization from small business to large organization start with the exploration, the pilot, that try to build an MVP. But the objective, the goal is to have a guest life cycle completely automated, meaning that a guest user has the capability to join a team invited by an internal user, or he can register from a forms endpoint, for example, or another formula from form endpoint, and it needs to have the full capability to leave the tenant without any complicated way to do so. So how we can implement governance, and before looking about Graph API, what do we need to control? So we need to define, we need to control, we need to set up how we will let the user consume the collaboration workspace. After that, we will infuse, we will apply the business strategy. What needs the business inside the templates? For example, what the business, what are the mandatory settings for the business to secure the business, to expand the business? And of course, we will leverage the Graph API, a part of it, not everything is on Graph API, to analyze and to evolve the governance. Because one other very important thing about using Graph API and using Graph API to build a governance, lifecycle or automation, whatever we want about collaboration governance, is that it has to be evolved and analyzed frequently. Meaning that when you build something, for example, in January, to answer a business needs, I will take a very easy example. A business teams ask me to build a template for Teams with many tabs, application, notification, approvals, etc. I will build it through Graph, but maybe in March or in December the same year, the business will not fit anymore for the business. The template, sorry, for the business, because the business changed, there have some change. So it's very important to understand that about governance, we have to understand that the feedback, it's the key to nurture the evolution of the governance. So don't forget about the feedback. Don't forget about to ask a business user, end user, how do they feel about the solution you will implement? How do they feel about the automation you implement? And what do you need to adapt and to change to correctly fit their needs? And this is a mind map I try to work and to update monthly about all the kind of aspects we can leverage on Microsoft Teams governance through Graph API. Sorry, because I see there is some information in French, but I will share after this meetup the full mind map in English. I will share it on the link you have here. So the important thing about this mind map is to see that through Graph API, we can leverage a very large scope of things about Microsoft Teams governance. We can leverage the life cycle, the creation, the archiving, the deletion of a team, but we can also build some very customized and very immersive scenario using, for example, adaptive card, like you will see just after with Tomasz, or you can build some interaction, notification to drive your business users through a way. And often when I speak with business owner, they tell me the issue they have currently is that it's not about using Teams, it's not about making templates. It's about making sure that everyone in the same team or in the same population, for example, sales or HR or whatever we want, they work the same way. And when we as business owner implement some a business process, we want the users to use the same business process for the same project. We don't want a sales managing an account differently than another sales. We want the best account management process for the sales. So it's very important for them to have an aligned way for. And if we go now on a Graph API, Graph API is very, very easy to understand and to use when we understand how Microsoft 365 groups works. From me and from my experience, I'm not a developer, and I discovered Office 365 almost 5-6 years ago only. And I start working with Graph API through a blog post series I will share after on the slide, called 30 Days of Microsoft Graph. It's a series built by the Microsoft Graph team. And it's very good for people like me who do not have a developer background to understand how we connect to Graph, how we can leverage automation through Power Automate, for example, and understand also the architecture. And this slide is from Microsoft Build, the last one. I put the source on the left bottom corner. And you can understand that when you want, for example, to automate the creation of a planner, and it could be more deeper and automation of bucket, of task, etc. But let's focus on a planner. You have to attach this plan to a group, and to do so, you have to understand correctly what Microsoft 365 group is, how it works inside Azure Active Directory, but also inside Office 365 himself. When you create a group, what happened in the backend? If you create a group from a Teams or from an Outlook or from a Yammer perspective, what is created and what is not created, what is enabled and what is not. And it will help you a lot if you are looking to use Graph API to handle automation. One other thing is that when you are using a Graph API, you can choose which kind of notification you want for your user, for your experience, for your immersion. And you can use many kind of aspect of notification. You can have the classic notification by email, but you can also decide that all your experience you want to automate through Graph API has to go through Teams directly. You can even try to build, but I'm not an expert, maybe Tomasz will tell you more deep. But you can also use the Power Virtual Agent to build notification or interaction, and of course it's working on mobile, as you can see on this screen. For example, when I create a team, I decide that there is an approval process, and the approval process goes through my Outlook, but also on my mobile phone because I have the Power Automate application set up. So this is the 30 days of Microsoft Graph I told you about. And for me, when you are using the Graph API, you have to understand that it's a bit disturbing because you are thinking about when I create something, when I send a request, when I send a post, a get, a delete, whatever kind of request I will send through Graph API. Some of them are not immediately applied on your tenant. So, and some of them sometimes failed or just go through a timeout. And working with Graph API is you have to be delicate with Graph API. You have to handle the answer, to check when you send a request. Always check what is the request, what is the answer, and if the answer tell you, for example, these teams were created, just check it to be sure. And when you check it, maybe you will have to set up, for example, a delay to wait the teams to be fully operational, fully created by Microsoft Graph backend, where we do not have any kind of interaction possible. But you have to wait these teams to be set up, for example, to be able to send a notification or to add an owner or a member. So think about Microsoft Graph for me, and I hope I will have the opportunity to speak about with more experts on Graph, because for me, Graph is not a very instant kind of API with Office 365 group, Office 365. It's more about the near real-time experience. When you send or when you do something with Graph, it can take some time to be correctly executed. And the last, for me, pain point about Graph is that a lot of actions still are in beta, and it can be a blocker for organization or for team who are looking about Graph, because a lot of them are in beta, and in beta meaning not supported by Microsoft support. It's a situation where you have to choose about using the V1 or using the beta. And for example, when I build some automation through a Graph API to collect data, to collect reports, for me, I don't bother to use the beta endpoint, because I'm not changing any data on Microsoft 365 infrastructure. I'm not creating any entity, any Active Directory group. I'm just collecting data. So using the beta endpoint is not an issue. It will not break anything. And I can handle myself the error. But from another perspective, if I am trying to build some very complex scenario, I have to explain to the customer or to my peers who work with me that maybe it can be dangerous to use this endpoint, because we have no feedback on this endpoint, and we should wait that this endpoint go in general availability, meaning V1, to be used. But we can prepare the code, meaning the action in Power Automate workflow. We can prepare it, because it's just a switch between the V1 and the beta. And last but not least, there is a very good customer story shared by Jess Moreno from Microsoft, and it shows very deeply how we can use the Power Automate to build some governance scenario. And for me, one of the very funny thing about Teams governance, or about governance in general through Graph API, is that every case can be different. There is no one size fit all on governance and on Graph API. You will see some example using backend in SharePoint list, building a very large kind of catalog to collect and to share this catalog to user. Or you will see some third party building an Azure infrastructure to serve and to build a third party application through the stores, for example. Or maybe you will see just classic and very small but efficient way to control who can create and who cannot create teams with only a few templates. So using the Graph API to build governance and to build automation is, for me, it's different from every aspect of customer or organization or stakeholder you are talking with. So this is almost everything I wanted to share with you about automation and API and Graph API. I will be pleased to answer any question you could have, because I know I didn't share any or present any deep dive on the flow. I will prepare, and this is something I have for 2021 to prepare a presentation about the solution I built through Power Automate and Power Platform in more generally, and go deeper inside of it to show and to present how I did it, which kind of workflow I built. But first, I have to clean my workflow to not be shamed by some of you. But I will be very happy to answer any question about Graph API anyone could have.
Thank you, Hadrien. Okay, all right. Let me just open the allowing attendees to unmute so we can
There's one
start.
question.
Yeah, so that's why I opened it.
Philip,
go ahead, Philip.
Yeah, thank you. Great session. Thank you for your presentation. I have a little bit question because we have a internal onboarding flow and doing it with SharePoint lists and forms, and what's the use case behind is that we want to control the Teams hashtags or Teams tags. And I was wondering what's all about the new features in Teams, if they're getting a Graph API or not. There's so much features. I'm not aware of that there's a Graph API solution. It's a bit a pity because we want to automate the onboarding process for bigger departments, even internally.
Okay. So I think I understand the question, and I will try to answer in two parts. For me, the first part, and it's not a good news, there is a lot of missing Teams feature in Graph API. For example, you cannot create an announcement. You cannot, at my knowledge, I have to check again, create a meeting in Teams, directly in Teams, and set up the attendee, the presenter, all automated this. And from an onboarding perspective, you can leverage the notification, the adaptive card, all kind of notification aspect. You can also leverage the tabs to set up a video and to create like an onboarding pathway for this new collaborator. But tags, no, you cannot. And this is a very, for me, this is a gap. Microsoft has to think about Graph API because having this delay through very powerful feature like tags. For example, we use tags in many events to contact speakers, to contact sponsor, to contact organization teams, because tags is very powerful. But when you are thinking about implementing a very big Teams governance, for example, inside an organization, you will have many templates, but you will say, no, I cannot handle the tags because this is not available in Graph API. And for me, this is sad because we are reducing the kind of feature we are promoting to user. And for me, using Graph API to automate things, it's also about pushing more feature through end users.
Thank you. Then I will stay the Teams hashtag bot in our department for the moment.
But I'm
also, I can add here is that in Graph API, not every call is possible to be used as an application. So for many endpoints, you need to use the user context, not just an application registered in Azure. And this is also kind of a limitation because you'd like to automate some requests and you can't because you have two-factor authentication, which is hard to obtain in Flow, and the troubles just arises. So.
Yes, this is very important what you said, Tomasz. I didn't talk about it, but this is one of the first question I ask to organization I work with this kind of governance is, does it bother you? You will have one service account in every kind of your teams. Yes or no? If it's yes, happy, it's open bar for me. If it's no, okay, we will talk and maybe you will change your mind, but we have to talk because there is a lot of things we will not be able to do. But you can also, and recently I enabled this for a customer, you can also, for example, for the lifecycle, this organization didn't want to have the service account inside their teams. but you can add this account from an amount of time, handling the life cycle. And when the life cycle is done, when the workflow, the approbation is processed, you can remove this account. It's a little bit tricky because you have to handle the add and the remove of the member, but you can do so.
Yeah. Hopefully that helps, Philip. Something I want to add on the hashtags is basically nothing stops you from using hashtags. It's just not in a way supported. You can put hashtags in the text and you can find the results in the search. Yeah. So you can in a way use them, but they are not real hashtags. But what was fun when I was experimenting with Graph API, I don't know, a year ago, something like that, a year and a half ago, is that I was able to reply to replies with Graph API. I'm not sure if that still exists or not, but I was able to hide hashtags under the messages, and so you can find the messages via search.
That's
another thing is that we weren't able to actually mention a user until like half a year ago, and this functionality arrived as a ready-to-use action in Microsoft, in Flow. And so maybe one day you will be also able to just use an action, create a hashtag, and then use the outcomes in a message, so the same as the mentioning works. But you can't still mention a channel.
Yeah, it's the at mentioning. Well, it wasn't possible at Graph API actually to mention the channel.
It was somehow possible via the HTTP using Azure AD calls.
Yeah, but it was tricky to create the add mentions in the Graph API, but it was possible to do in several levels.
It requires a user context, not an application context. So that's one of these entities that requires a user, not a system account.
Yeah, the Flow makes a lot of things easier in that sense. But a combination of using the Flow and using the Graph API, that's something fun, something you might consider as well. Okay. Should we let Tomasz out?
Yeah, talk about some adaptive cards.
Yeah, and flows. Yeah, now you have a kind of flowing start here.
Well, I need to say that when I was listening to your session, Hadrien, I felt like, wow, it's never been. It's never been before that two sessions are so much complementary, and I really think that ours somehow are. So I hope that you already see my screen, and I think that all right.
Yes,
so I also need to say that when I was listening to you speaking about the Microsoft Teams as a center of the universe and everything, I had the same thoughts this morning when I was trying to prepare some short talk for this session, for this meetup. And so I had this kind of a comparison that, many years ago, when possibly many of us was still in diapers and drinking milk. The Microsoft SharePoint, as the very first versions, were created only to be an answer for those network drives, to be something more secure, but simply to deliver the same functionalities. And so I remember the times when Microsoft Teams arrived, the first releases, and it was like, it's just some kind of replacement for a Skype, but with some additional functionalities to create these conversational channels, so something that we were really missing in Skype, and the area to share files. Well, nothing really fancy. And then over the years, as we are now viewing how Teams is developing, and I'm just wondering if there was a single person in the very beginning who had this very open vision that yes, one day we'll just create a very much like a digital workplace where users will be really able to create everything. But over the years that Microsoft Teams is with us and seeing how much it developed and where it developed, it is really something like the SharePoint's journey, when in the beginning it was mainly designed to share files or to let users to work on files. And then at some certain moment, it was kind of a platform where organizations were able to create almost anything with the deployed packages, with WSPs, with custom applications. They were building anything they wanted, any custom application within SharePoint. And so right now with Microsoft Teams, we are not actually maybe able to build anything, but this landscape of possibilities is still growing, and we're now clearly able to say that Microsoft Teams is this new digital workplace that Microsoft is giving to companies where they can collaborate, chat, make phone calls, video calls, work on files, create applications, build chatbots, make business applications, flows, well, just name it. And like everything is built, nearly everything is built under the same license subscription, so no additional costs. And adaptive cards as well. All right, so now it's short introduction. Let me just get back to the topic. So just very short, a few words. Come on. It's always an issue. So just a few words about me. I'm Tomasz Poszytek from Warsaw in Poland. I'm also Business Applications MVP, and I do work with these technologies for years. Like I first met SharePoint when it was in the version 2007. I just had a small short glance with version 2.3, I mean 2003, but it was just a small short affair and never ever again. Just, well, if you'd like to somehow connect with me, simply scan this QR code and there are hyperlinks to every social media channel I'm present at, so just connect. And having that said, let me just go to the contents. So about the cards in general, about the concept of cards, when you look at the modern applications like communication applications, social applications, even Yammer or WhatsApp, you can clearly identify within its content these areas that somehow are inside, but we know that they're coming from an outside, like they're just embedded there. However, even though they're embedded, they still follow the user experience of the application and they just seamlessly fit there. And so, like in this example, when we look at a video and then we navigate across different channels, different applications, this video is following us, but the way the video is displayed somehow belongs and is determined by the host application. And so here is the definition of the cards actually. So this is the technology that is being used not only by Microsoft, but as well by any other today company who does create such software to help users to communicate. So that the cards are being actually used to display the content within the host experience. And so just a really brief history around these cards in Microsoft. So the history started around 2016 when Microsoft realized that they have a couple of teams working on the same concept of this technology. So there was an Exchange team, there was a framework team, now there was a Windows team working on Windows Timeline and those so-called tiles. And then they decided to simply merge all this knowledge into a single team. They hired Matt Hidinger. They put as well David Clow as the principal product managers, and so they built a team. And since then, they're working intensively on the technology and developing it and developing and developing. And like the adaptive cards that we are using today had their first release around June 2018. So the fact that those cards with Microsoft are so special, there are a couple of reasons behind. So first, they do natively render on any device that has, or any device, any application that has this SDK of adaptive cards embed. They, as said, automatically adopt to user experience of the host that displays them. So therefore, they're also low cost to create because we are only need to focus on contents, not on the layout, not on the fonts, not on the colors, not on the width and height, because all this information, all these parameters are being set and controlled by the host. And also because we really define the card as a JSON, and then there is a schema behind that JSON. Therefore, there is no possibility to pass any kind of malicious code or any kind of information that can harm a user, because this won't be simply rendered and executed. Also, what is important is that the cards are not only built to display information, they are as well built as a developer's technology, so developer can take an SDK and extend it. Cards also have controls to grab information from the user, to let them click hyperlinks, to let them input data into forms and then submit them. And also they support text-to-speech applications, so they can as well be used by any screen readers applications. And as said, the SDK that we have with Microsoft Adaptive Cards it is now present in almost any communication application. So Outlook, Teams, Bot Framework, Cortana, and Timeline. Possibly somewhere next year, it will also be added to Power Virtual Agents, because right now we cannot use adaptive cards in Power Virtual Agents, unfortunately. Plus, this SDK can be taken to your application, your custom applications. It is hosted on GitHub. You can take it for free. And then simply using one of the open source frameworks as well, you can simply create your own applications and use the SDK to really enhance this experience, or maybe make creation of the interface faster, because you can actually just create a whole website, a whole application simply being rendered using adaptive cards. One thing around that, if you're interested, you can join the Scottish Virtual User Group meeting that is going to be in 2 weeks. There's going to be a session led by Team Kadenbach. I'm always having difficulties spelling his last name. By Team, and he will be speaking about adaptive cards from the developer's perspective. So he will showcase how you can actually do them, use the SDK, and develop projects by programming, not just drag and drop, but just writing pure code. And that's enough. I'll just jump over to the demos this time. So basically, when we want to design an adaptive card, there are 2 ways to do this today in the means of basically Outlook and Teams, because those 2 channels are right now dedicated for, let's call them us, the power users or citizen developers. And they do not require really this programming knowledge, because you can simply just grab the code, embed it in Power Automate Action, and then it is being displayed. So first we have the Adaptive Cards Designer. It is under the adaptivecards.io/designer. And here we can actually start with creating a card either from the blank card. So you need to hit this new card icon, and then you can choose whether an existing template that you just want to customize or a blank card. Now, once you decide whether to start with blank or not, you can then pick any of these elements from the left navigation, from the left picker, and then simply drag and drop them onto the canvas, and then additionally configure them in the element properties. What is also important here is that this designer not only lets you to design the card, but it also helps you to validate the outcomes. So for example, today in Microsoft Teams, we are using the version 1.3. Hopefully it will be added in the near soon. However, we are using version 1.2. Plus, this is not a fully embedded version 1.2. So even though it says that this is that version, not all functionalities are actually supported and available for us to be used in Microsoft Teams. So then the next thing we have to do is to set this host application to change it from the bot framework, which is the highest now. I mean, the most permissive, because it really embeds the SDK 1.3 with its all functionalities. Then we need to switch to Microsoft Teams dark or light theme. That's up to us. And so then you will see that not only the interface, the layout of the card changes. So for example, the buttons are now in horizontal layout, not vertical. Plus also the validator, the validation of the items. If you would like to use something that is not present, will explain, or sorry, will report an issue. So for example, if I use a media control, and then I would say that possibly, I don't know if it's going to work, just some kind of a random, yeah, whatever. Then in the preview mode, okay, it doesn't load up, but there should also be some kind of an information that there is an error because the media type is not supported. I don't know why it's not working, but you have to trust me that there should be kind of like a validation that part of, like for these controls that are not supported in Microsoft Teams, there should be a notification that, hey, you can't use them because they're just not working. So anyway, this way you can design adaptive card and then copy paste this code that you have created and then, for example, use it in Microsoft Teams. Now, one thing that you can see here as well are those small, sorry, I thought I have the Zoom It enabled. Let me just open Zoom It so you'll be able to see a bit better. Okay, so one thing that is present here in this designer are those small placeholders, and these are used as a functionality that is called adaptive cards templating language. So basically that thing arrived with the version 1.2 actually. However, with Microsoft Teams, this is one of those functionalities that is not supported. It basically lets you to design a data in a JSON format and then use these placeholders to bind the JSON, the values from the data from the JSON with those places in your adaptive card design. And therefore you can simply have like one design of adaptive card used across multiple scenarios with different data. So like, for example, here I can expand this sample data editor. So you will see that this is just a JSON data. And for example, this text here is bound to title. So once I hit the preview mode, it should be, yes, replaced with, however, it is replaced as well, I mean, already. But basically, this value here is taken from that data. All right. So this is about adaptive cards. Now, the next thing that you can create and use from Power Automate, maybe not actually with Microsoft Teams, but with Outlook, which is always very useful in those workflows that we're creating, are actionable messages. So those that can be sent to your Outlook, and that can as well allow users to interact or take part in the processes right from their inboxes without the need to navigate anywhere else. And here as well, once you start creation, you can choose either an existing or to use a blank one. Then the layout is a little bit different. All those elements you can put on the card are at the top. But in the end, what is also present here is this payload in a JSON that you can use to actually send them to the Outlook. And here as well, you can do the preview, so to check how it's going to look like, or you can even send this actionable message to your own inbox and to see how it really displays. Wow, all right. So now I'm gonna just show you something around this integration between Power Automate and Microsoft Teams. So basically, when we go to Power Automate and we would like to start creation of the new flow, there are always those two controls you can use, trigger and an action. And so with speaking about the Microsoft Teams, you know that we have already a couple of triggers that we can use. And these triggers can be mostly used for those so-called governance scenarios. So as Hadrien mentioned, we can actually try to make this governance around Teams with Graph API. That's correct. But there is also some number of actions that we can use or create around the governance for Teams with just Power Automate without any Graph API. So for example, we can use the trigger is called the forest selected message. Now this trigger is very special because that one has a built-in adaptive cards designer. So once I hit that button, I am immediately being shown the same designer that I just showed you in a separate page. But this one is just embedded inside the Power Automate. And this is basically the experience around designing adaptive cards in Power Automate for Microsoft Teams or for other channels that the Power Automate team is pursuing, because that is even more comfortable for the end users, for the designers, rather than navigating to the designer and then back and designer and back. Simply here is enough. So right here, you can simply design this adaptive card, then save it. And then if there were any outputs, then obviously you would be able to use them as the dynamic values. Sorry, I was. So if that card had any kind of like an outcomes defined in that form. So if I, okay, there is my name, there is my email. So those identifiers are set. So I would be able not only to get context of the message that was used to trigger this this flow, but as well data from the card. So you can see here my name, my email, my tel. So that this will be the data from the card sent by the user. Now how it looks in the like in the action, I use that trigger to create some kind of a governance around the action. So in my tenant, users are actually able to go under the more actions, and all these flows that are created using that trigger are present here. As you can see, it has appeared already. So the name of the flow is going to be as well used as the name of this option here. Then please don't use a too long name because it will be truncated and not displayed, not fully displayed. Just try to make some fancy names and very descriptive. Nevertheless, the flow I have created here. First, let's user to decide what would they like to do with this message. So whether they would like to report it or request its deletion, or maybe send them the copy of the message. And then depending on the scenario they have chosen, they're also being asked different supportive questions. So for example, in terms of the report, user is asked to like define why this why they want to report this action, this message. And so once this is submitted, well, you'll see that there is going to be another message like this displayed, so that the author of this post is actually informed with this mention that, hey, your message is under investigation. Okay, so this happened. The flow is working, hopefully. And then what also happened is that the Teams administrator group on their channel is being informed that there has been a new message reported. And here is again an adaptive card sent with information about who reported that message, what was the reason, what are the additional information, and all the information that the flow was able to gather around that message actually, plus a button that lets me to navigate to that message, which as well opens Microsoft Teams highlighting this selected message with this yellow border. So this way, administrator is able actually to identify what happened. And then they can react, they can delete this message, they can do other activities that were requested. That is up to the administrator's team. Now, another scenario that we can use Microsoft, the adaptive cards, is this kind of the onboarding process, or parts of the onboarding process, or any other kind of onboarding a user to something that can be automated. So one of the actions that we as well have here is the trigger that is called when a user is added to Microsoft Teams. So, right, so when a new team member is added. Now, this trigger, although it doesn't have any adaptive card designer built in, but it lets you to start the process that actually then, for example, requires from a user some kind of confirmation, some kind of an approval, some kind of a lecture of the materials we have prepared for them, and then confirmation that they did have read those information and then do a comply with the requirements and so on. So in that case, when I would like, for example, to add a new member to this HR team, and I will add here a member that is called a John Researcher. Then in a couple of seconds or sometimes minutes, it is really not deterministic how long this flow requires before it is triggered. Okay, this is the flow. So then in a couple of moments, it should be triggered. Nevertheless, what this flow is doing, I'll just show you how it works before we'll see it actually in action, is that first it is actually assigning, sending an adaptive card to a user, a specific user in that is added to the team in private communication with some kind of a small rules that the user has to follow. And then once they comply, once they confirm that they do understand and do agree, then they are added to that private channel that is present in that Teams. And now this is done using a different action than the one you saw as a trigger for a selected message, because in Microsoft Teams we also have now 4 actions that we can actually use to post an adaptive card to a Teams. So there are 2 that lets you to simply post an adaptive card to Microsoft Teams, either a user or a channel, but these 2 actions only sends adaptive card but are not waiting for the response. And so if you decide to use these actions and post a form, any kind of a form, then when the user clicks to complete the form, the action or the bot flow that is like handling the adaptive card sent to Teams will display an error message that there is no flow waiting for the response, and therefore this response cannot be received. So if you're planning to send an adaptive card to a user as a form so that you would like to grab their response, to grab data from the form that you have on that card, then you need to either use to send an adaptive card to a Teams user or a Teams channel and to wait for the response. Now these 2 actions have their limit, the same limit as the approvals in Power Automate. They do wait only up to 30 days before being timed out. So if during the 30 days there is no response from the user, then the flow will simply get terminated. Again, there is this new action that is called get mention token for user, which is also very useful when you would like to send a card with a mention, so that a user will as well get this notification pop-up that they were mentioned in the communication. So hopefully right now the flow has triggered. No, still not. Crazy. Now, one exception to that, let's say, actions that I've mentioned, so that when we look again at Teams actions that we have in relation to adaptive cards, is that we can use this action to post an adaptive card as the flow bot to a user without waiting for a response in only one scenario that we can have in Power Automate. And this scenario is related to approvals. So if we decide to create an approval and only create but not start and wait, and then we add here wait for approval, then one of the outcomes that this action is generating is actually a working code of an adaptive card. Okay, maybe I need to configure it. Oh yeah, sorry. So like first to respond. So I said one of those outcomes is, you can see here, the Teams adaptive card, right? And that when you use a compose to outcome this dynamic outcome, then you will see that it's just a really purely working adaptive card code. So if you then use it as the value for the message, then these 3 actions will actually create an experience that this approval created here can be either completed by going to action items, to approvals, and to be completed there, or by completing it via the adaptive card in a channel. I mean, in channel it doesn't work, in a private communication, or if you decide as well to enable notifications so that this approval is also going to be sent as an actionable message to a user's inbox, then there is this 3rd channel so they can as well complete it in Outlook. And then in this scenario, no matter which approach that approval is completed, all other channels are going to be closed, let's say. So if user completes via email, then the approval here in Power Automate is going to be marked as completed, and this adaptive card as well. If the adaptive card, then actionable message is going to be closed, and approval in Power Automate is posted as well. So this will create this kind of like a unique, unified experience that no matter from which mean of communication the user would like to complete this workflow, this approval, then any other channel is going to be completed as well. So hopefully now it's done. Now, I really have no idea why it's taking so much time, but maybe if I resubmit this workflow, I would be able to have the same experience as well. Possibly not, because there is no user edit. Oh, but it works. So anyway, now if this happened automatically, then let me just find my John Researcher, okay, inbox. Then what John would experience is this private conversation chat with Power Automate bot, actually. So now that he should navigate to chat, and then there is a flow. And so here he received this kind of a short set of rules that he has to confirm that he follows, he complies. And so once that is done, then what the Power Automate is also going to do right now is, okay, so that's done. You can see that then there is a notification that the user has been added to this private channel. So right now I do have an access to this confidential channel. And what happened here was actually part of this whole Graph API story that Hadrien just mentioned. So there is in my tenant created an Azure application that has permissions to actually add users to groups. But it's loading. Right, so there is this app registration that is called GraphCall. So that was the one that sent the notification. And one of the permissions that this application has is this group read, write all, and then channel members read, write all, which are required by the definition, by the documentation of the Graph API to actually handle users' additions. And I believe I'm using here the Graph API v2, which is the beta version, but trust me, version 1 of Graph API has really a low number of functionalities around Microsoft Teams. With version 2, there is a lot of more. Yeah, so that's the beta version of the endpoint. Nevertheless, with that, this onboarding of a user can be automated, so that doesn't actually have to be any kind of administrator who then manages users' lifecycle around the channels, around let's say propagation of the user across other teams. So this can be handled automatically. And then the last maybe demo I would like to show you is the one again around the approval and around the usage of this post to a channel and wait for the response. So here I do have a small application that is used by the and I've lost the word, by the front desk. They scan the invoice, then they upload it to this application, then the application simply using the AI builder is trying to recognize all the information. And now what is important here is that once the information is recognized, they can then send it for approval. And then what happens here actually is that the accountancy team is now going to receive their own approval request. Here it is, their own approval request with all the information that was recognized from the invoice, which, I mean, the most important are those items that they can simply review what were the prices and what is the total value, and also some of the information. So based on that, they can hopefully simply approve or reject. Now, this workflow obviously works only for the first approval. So right after this is approved, the workflow simply ends with the outcome approved. However, at the same time, just to show you, without going into very details, the CFO, which in this case is my John Researcher, also receives the same kind of a request. However, he does receive it to his inbox. So here you can see the actionable messages loading, and he also have all the information that was present on the adaptive card. This adaptive card here in Outlook looks a little bit different, but the functionality is actually the same. So here you can as well or reject. The only difference between this adaptive card here in Outlook and that adaptive card here in Teams is that with adaptive cards in Teams, we are not really able to define this confirmation message. So the only thing we can actually define is this small text. And this text we are defining up, prior to, before we get the outcomes of the form. So we cannot use here any kind of information that the user is sending to us, because wrong, that was this flow. Because this action is just a little bit in its early stage. Maybe in like nearest future it will be enhanced to as well give us the functionality to define this confirmation message after we receive the data from the card. But today, if you would like to close this card, showing that you received the inputs and confirm that you confirm that the data has been sent, then the only way is to simply define this update message and set this flag to update the card. But as you saw, it will only display you this message. There is no way to pass the data from the card back to the user, and it's only changing this small text. And we have no control over the layout. We cannot do anything more fancy. With actual messages in Outlook, we have much more control, because we are actually able to define where the outcomes of this card are sent, and that in my case this is sent to a different Power Automate flow, which after processing the data is sending a response, which is a confirmation adaptive card. So once I hit the approve, this card is being closed and the new one is displayed following the same design with the logo, with the icons. So this is consistent. Whereas in Microsoft Teams, we don't have this. We don't have this comfort. So just maybe one last thing about the architecture here in Microsoft Teams. All these cards that are being sent either by Flow or by chatbots or any other things are actually done by the Flow bot. So there is always a bot under this communication. When speaking about the communication from Power Automate, it's called a Flow bot. And so in adaptive cards, we are unable to define where this submit date. So if I add a new action that is going to be submit, I am unable to define the target URL. So when I hit a submit, these contents are always sent back to the Flowbot, and then Flowbot actually has to do something other with that messages. So those actions that are actually letting you post an adaptive card and wait for the response are used by the bot that way that the bot itself knows which flow is waiting for this kind of information. And so after the bot receives the data, it is sending it then further to that flow instance. But we are unable to manually define it. With actionable messages, it's different, because when we add the submit button here, we do have the functionality or the field to define where the outcomes of that card should be sent. So here we can actually use a different flow, and then that different flow can send a response that replaces the card. So much more control over that. And well, I think speaking that said, I am done. I hope that it wasn't too fast, and that this is going to be just a beginning of a cool discussion and lots of questions. Are you still with me?
Yeah, we are here. Thank you, Tomasz. That was super, and I didn't feel it was too fast, but I have been playing with flows.
It was too fast.
Stuff. I didn't feel it was too fast. But okay, hey, Hadrien, you have your hand raised, so I'm not going to speak too much.
Okay. Bravo, Tomasz. I have two quick questions. The first one is because I didn't test, is Adaptive Card compatible with Power Virtual Agent and not just the Flowbot? So
that was something I mentioned in the beginning. So the adaptive cards in Power Virtual Agents are not yet supported like out of the box. So you cannot send an adaptive card to Power Virtual Agent from Power Automate or from within the Power Virtual Agents conversation, because this SDK is not there yet. It was meant to be in Wave 2 release. I mean, in release Wave 2 this year or January next year, but the documentation says, the roadmap says right now it's postponed until possibly Wave 1 2021, so somewhere middle next year. And the only way to send adaptive card to Power Virtual Agents is to use the bot skills. So as you possibly saw, we have now this beta integration between PVA and bot skills. You can like launch bot framework composer right from PVA and then design your bot skill. I haven't played with that. They say it's not that hard to adopt, but that is today the way to send adaptive card to PVA. But then it's like not from PVA to PVA or to PVA, but it's displayed by the bot framework natively.
Okay. And my second question is more about handling the approval inside Teams. So when you build an adaptive card, including approval, so when you build an approval, you send this approval not by email, but by team, but in Teams. But you see many, my knowledge, maybe you can correct me, but if for example, Vesa send an approval to you and I through Teams, by automation, of course, if you answer the approval, my adaptive cards doesn't update.
So this update of an adaptive card, it should work if this is assigned to a single user.
Yeah, so single user, yes, but
yeah,
if you have multiple user, there is no updates from adaptive cards. You send this adaptive card through Teams client to many approver. You confirm?
So when you assign a task to many approvers and then you would like to send the same card to many approvers,
yes,
then this is some kind of an unsupported scenario as far as I know. So even if you do like start an approval here and then you split it using the parallel branch, and then for example send 3 adaptive cards, then I doubt it's really going to work this way.
I don't even use the branch. I use a classic for each, and I look to users. But this is the same. This is exactly the same you explain. And the issue I have is that the user A is not aware that the user B already answered the same approval.
Yeah.
So I'm leveraging other kind of notification you showed us, the native out-of-box action to notify the other approver that hey, this is over, someone already answered it, but it's not updating natively.
So I would say that as long as we are not able to actually post any kind of like a request to an existing adaptive card, so like following the same scenario that we have in actionable messages, that we can when we do have a request, we can send a response and simply try to close this card, then we are unable to accomplish those scenarios. So even I've created like a pattern that you can assign a single adaptive card to multiple users and then like in parallel and then handle the approval this way, only using the adaptive cards without actually the Microsoft Teams flows approval. Then if one approver completes, then the other approvers' adaptive cards cannot be closed because there is no such functionality today.
Right.
You can only notify them that this is done, so you don't have to take any action.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
Andreas, I see you have a question as well. You can unmute yourself and.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for your session, Tomasz. It was very, very awesome. Cool stuff you can do with adaptive cards. So my question is, the problems I have is how to, if you use templating for the adaptive cards, how can you push the data from Power Automate into the adaptive card? It doesn't work in my case. I have to pre-populate the dynamic data in the flow and then push it completely with the adaptive card.
Right. So Well, as you realize, there is actually no support for templating. Sorry. So this is one of those features in 1.2 that is not supported. So this is the same approach as I'm doing, that you saw this adaptive card with the invoices, details. I did it the same. So first I was doing for each item from the invoice, I was simply concatenating this JSON, so adding those row positions. And then finally, I was just creating the full adaptive card by merging header with the items with the footer. And like if we had this full support for templating language, then what I would only need to do is to simply grab the whole JSON. I have it also prepared. So this is this adaptive card that was sent, right? But this time, like the items are simply using this templating language, and because the data that is being used here to bind to this template is a table. Therefore, once I hit the preview mode, it will be automatically converted into like the same sequence is going to be repeated over the number of rows in the JSON data. But well, this is not yet supported, and even if you turn on the experimental features in Power Automate, so once you navigate here to settings and then to where was that? Help me here, and you turn the experimental features, then okay, it has to reload. But then those actions that we can use around the adaptive cards will actually follow the same approach as you saw in that for a selected message trigger, so that you'll be as well having this button to open a designer and command load. So I just don't need to speak about nothing. I just wanted to show you.
This is, I think, the same you already did in the video with John Levesque.
Yeah, possibly, yes.
Yeah,
so anyway,
I think so.
So right now with these experimental features, you can see that there is this designer, right? And there we can actually define the message, the keys and values, and they can be used as the binding, like to bind now data. But from what I was experimenting and testing, you can only bind those very, very basic, like, for example, the company name. So not the table, not the expressions, not the functions, not the rules, conditions, all those are not working. But this experimental, and I highly discourage you to use it in productive solutions, because it's really very not stable.
Yeah, so we create the JSON from the data in the flow and then push it all together with the adaptive card in the channel or in the information in the dialog to the user.
So that's the way I'm following as well right now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I can't see there's any more questions. So I think we'll round up here. Thank you so much for your session, Tomasz. Great stuff here.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
And I'll just go share my slide here. All right. So thank you so much for attending. And our next meetup is at the 14th of December, same time. And then we'll have Joao Ferreira and Albert Hoiting as speakers. And remember to join our Meetup user group at teamsnation.rocks/join as well to get all the information and reminders and all that stuff. So with that, unless Vesa, there's something for you to add?
No, I don't think so. I think this was very well covered, and thank you, Tomasz, from my part as well. It was really great to follow up your session.
Absolutely. All right. With that, thank you so much for attending, and see you next time, 14th of December.
Yeah, you can still punch up the last slide. Oh no,
There was
so
one more.
There's one more.
Yeah.
There's always one
yeah.
more. Of course, we have this one. So please do follow up, connect with us if you haven't done it already, because then you will keep up to date what's happening, and of course the big TeamNation conference information is there. So hopefully there will be or not hopefully, but it will be a great event as well again. It was previously known as Teams Fest, so you know what to expect. The best.
And remember, today's session will be uploaded to our YouTube channel as well.